Ball!
Welcome to Shaq's Footy, and today we're talking about who is the greatest AFL player of all time. The AFL, our long prestigious game, has been going on for over 100 years, yet it's one of the only sports in the world without a clear and decisive GOAT. But in this video, I'm going to make an argument for 7 players. Yes, 7 players. That's how hard it is to determine who the best player of all time is in this game. But the controversial question must be asked. Who is the AFL's greatest player of all time? What makes this so difficult is the different positions and roles and how reliant team play is for success. You need to not only fill out the spreadsheet, you must pass the eye test. And this can make the difference between a great player and a good player sometimes. The AFL is also a lot better than it was 50 years ago, so in my opinion, some of the older legends would struggle to be as dominant in our modern game. Firstly, let's talk about Dustin Martin. He is one of the best players of recent times, and he's such a big game player. He has fans in awe every time he touches the footy with his trademarked "don't argue" as well as recent team success with 3 premierships in 4 years. He not only has the team success, he has the individual success with 3 Norm Smiths, 4 All-Australian selections and a Brownlow with the most votes ever in a single season. With over 250 games played, he averages 25 disposals, 3 tackles and a goal. He's just such a complete player, being able to go forwards but also make it to the centre bounce and win the footy. He has the league on edge every time he's near the footy. The sheer workhorse mentality of Dusty has just pushed his name into the conversation of best players of all time. Next is Chris Judd. Chris Judd exploded onto the scene, becoming a dominant midfielder from when he entered the league. He was rewarded the Brownlow in his 3rd season and became the youngest player to ever win the Brownlow, but he struggled to win it all as he lost in the big dance to Brisbane that year. Again, he would make the grand final and lose. He was awarded the Norm Smith medal, becoming one of 4 players to win this medal in a losing grand final. He would finally win his first premiership the next year against the Sydney Swans. Later, he decided to move to Carlton, and his dominance would continue, but as a different role. He was playing more of an inside mid, winning the hard ball. He was rewarded another Brownlow medal in 2010, with 24 disposals, 4 tackles and a goal on average. He was rewarded 6 All-Australians, 5 club champions. He was such a hard player, he was push his body to the limits. This hurts Judd because later in his career he dealt with nothing but injuries, which caused him to retire early. So it was 3 or 4 seasons where he basically did nothing. Next is Tony Lockett, by far the best goal kicker of all time, with 1,360 goals. Considered an unbreakable record. He played for the helpless Saints, so team success wasn't in sight, but just because he played for an unsuccessful club didn't mean he didn't see success individually. He kicked over 100 goals in 6 seasons, he won a Brownlow and 4 Coleman medals. He was the only player to ever win a Coleman and a Brownlow in the same season. Tony was considered unguardable, and each week it wasn't to try and stop Tony, it was to try and minimise the damage he would inflict. Tony would eventually make the controversial decision to leave St Kilda to go play for Sydney, where he saw his only grand final appearance, losing to North Melbourne in 1996, where he kicked 6 goals. Tony, for his career, would average 6 goals a game. What let Tony Lockett down was the lack of team success, but individually, he is the greatest full forward of all time, and some people will see him as the best player of all time. Wayne Carey, by far the most controversial player on this list off the field. But on the field, my God, he was a superstar. Duck's impact on the game is what makes him one of the best players of all time. He would average 3 goals and 16 disposals and would change the role of a centre-half forward. He would take the Kangaroos to 6 straight prelim finals, 2 premierships in the blue and the white. He was also nominated for 7 All-Australian teams and he won 4 club best and fairest. His impact on the game and his admired leadership is what made the success of the North Melbourne Football Club in the 90s. And it would have stayed that way if it wasn't for the incident His stats were not the best and he never won a Brownlow, but the success at North Melbourne can only be accredited to him and his efforts. Gary Ablett Sr. was considered the greatest player to never win a Brownlow by the average fan. Gary was adored by the Geelong Football Club. At one stage, he was the king of Geelong. With his high-flying moments and his amazing goals, there wasn't a part of his game that you just couldn't fall in love. He has nothing but stories of legends throughout his career, but one thing that knocks Gary is the lack of premierships. He made one, but he won the Norm Smith and kicked 9 goals in a losing grand final. He was a superstar forward, winning 3 Colemans and was a leading goal kicker for Geelong for 9 years. With 4 All-Australian selections, there was no question why you would hear legends about the Geelong Footy Club. Some people die on a hill claiming that he was the best player of all time. But this gets put into question when he can't win the greatest trophy in our game. Gary Ablett Jr. was the most hyped player to ever come to the football scene, due to being the son of the infamous Gary Ablett Sr. Gary Ablett had supreme skills, dominated the contested ball, and single-handedly carried the Gold Coast Suns to not be considered one of the worst teams of all time. He's one of the only few players to win a Brownlow at 2 different clubs. He represents the modern game to an absolute T, being the most valuable player 5 times, as well as 9 All-Australian selections, 2 premiership medals, and 6 club medals. Gary was on a different level compared to everyone, and he is one of the only few players that I believe could dominate in any era. His 2013 Brownlow medal season is one of the best individual seasons I have ever watched from a player. He dominated, and who I consider to be the greatest of all time. But it is up for debate. Lee Matthews, otherwise known as Lethal Lee, has the greatest argument to be called the GOAT because he's done it all, from team success and individual success. In the 90s, he was voted the best player of all time, but the game's changed. But the reason he was voted, because people have what we like to say, the Michael Jordan mentality. He was more determined than any other player and helped the Hawks to 4 premierships. Individually, he almost did it all. He had 8 club medals and an All-Australian selection and a Coleman medal. What really held him back from the other players is the absence of a Brownlow medal, which really lets Lethal down. Some honourable mentions that I have here is John Coleman, Bob Skilton, Robert Harvey, Greg Williams and Adam Goodes. I hope you guys can understand why the AFL is one of the only sports in the world without a clear and decisive greatest of all time. Please, help me out, tell me in the comments who you think I missed, and please don't forget to like and subscribe, it would really help me out. Thank you guys for watching.